today to talk with you about the importance of advocacy and the personal side of selling. What better way to help American families than to provide them with a peace of mind through life insurance products and your trusted advice. Few do more for the American family than you do. Because when tragedy strikes, we're there with more than condolences, casseroles, and carpools. That we have a social responsibility and a moral responsibility, a responsibility to take care of our families. In an article out of Success magazine a couple years ago, this probably says it best. Our promise, every monumental life insurance policy is a promise to meet needs, a promise to build long-term relationships, a promise to deliver trusted advice and responsive service, a promise to be there. Policyholders and their families need us most. When they're at their worst, we're at our best. Well, I could go on and quote different articles, but I love the words of Edward Guest. Paraphrase, it says, "I'd rather see a talk than hear one any day. I'd rather you walk beside me than merely show the way, for the eye's a better pupil and more willing than the ear. Good counseling is confusing, but example's always clear. For the best of all the teachers are the ones who live their creed. By putting into action is what everybody needs, and I can soon learn how to do it if you'll let me see it done. For I can watch you in action, but your tongue too fast may run. And the lectures you delivered, they're very fine and true, but I'd rather learn my lesson by observing what you do. For I may misunderstand you in that great advice you give, but there is no misunderstanding of how you act and how you live." No, there is no misunderstanding of how you act and how you live. Early in my career, I had the opportunity to see the talk. I heard horror stories. People were handed a book first week in the business and say, "Go get it, Tiger. Good luck, you're on your own. I hope you make it. If you don't worry about it. I've got somebody to take your place." And yet I was introduced 4 straight weeks also, Bill. 4 solid weeks, 2 weeks off without my sales manager, back the next week. And then every other month, I spent a full week with my manager. I wonder why I was so fortunate to be blessed with an individual that brought me in the business that way. He was the best. Still to this day, I still believe he's still one of the best that ever been associated with the company. He was the master. And his name is Bernie Chardine. And many of you have heard his stories. Some of you could tell these stories better than I could today. I get asked sometimes when I'm speaking outside the company that says, "That Chardine guy, is that a real fella? Those stories you tell, are they really true, or do y'all just kind of put that stuff together just to get people's attention?" So I see Carol's already keyed it up, and that's the picture right there. There's Bernie Chardine, my sales manager, and myself, picture taken in 2002. He is definitely a real fella. In fact, many have had a chance to visit with him and hear those same stories with Matt and Bill and Paul, and we've had a great time sharing those stories. Well, he is the real deal, and wouldn't it be great if everyone had the opportunity to come into the business with a sales manager like Bernie? A sales manager, a mentor, a coach, a true friend. And wouldn't it really be special today? Wouldn't it really be special? Instead of me standing up here, if we had the opportunity today to be able to introduce to you Bernie Chardine, that could talk to you today about the personal side of selling. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. You see, Bernie Chardine passed away last year. He actually passed away towards the end of the week of our leadership conference. And again, I got a chance to see the talk with our president, Henry Hagan. You see, Bernie was fighting a blood disease. It's perfect time, and he got a chance to almost predict when his life would end. He started in a quarter. He used to take a quart for every quarter. He would take a pint of blood, and then he got to a pint a month, and then down to a pint a week, and they gave him about 7 to 10 days that he would pass away. Just so happens to be the week of the conference. Now, the reason I tell you this, because I'd made a promise. We joked about it that I would be the last one to let him down. I was responsible for putting together the pallbearers and doing the eulogy, and timing just didn't work out. It seemed like that week. I got a call in the middle of the week that says it looks like he's not going to make it through the night. What was I going to do? I'd already promised him, and I said that I would be there, and I went to Henry, and I said, Henry, here's the situation. And halfway through it, he stopped me, and he said, you got a green light. If you got to go, you got to go. And I said, well, we have the banquet, though, and we've got Pinnacle Club, and we've got Henry. Again, you never know how important it was. Give a green light to go, fulfill a promise. By the way, perfect timing it was. I talked to him that night. In fact, I said, can he hear me? Is he able to hear? And he said, I think so. And I said, Bernie, I will be there. I've talked to our president, and I'll catch a flight as soon as if I get the word. But if you can make it just a little bit longer, 2 more days, I'm going to be there at 9 o'clock on Friday evening. If you can hang on there. Then I asked, did he hear me? She said, I think he did. Perfect timing. I landed at 9:05, Stanford Airport, and Bernie passed away 9:33. And so, he's not here today, but I can guarantee you his spirit is. And, Bernie, this one's for you. You see, he brought me into the business, and he did one of the best jobs at setting the stage. From the first day, we talked about how much the day was going to be worth, and how much that I wanted to make, and what I was going to do with it, and goal setting, and dream the big dream, and all the things you've heard me talk about. And at the end of the day, he handed me a sheet of paper. As I got ready to leave, he said, I want you to memorize this, and I want you to give this back to me tomorrow morning. Well, I thought, like you would think, that it would have something to do with creating a sale or handling an objection or a close or something around the insurance business, and to my surprise, I found out later on it was from Shakespeare, Macbeth. It said, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllables of recorded times. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools away to dusty death. Out, brief candle. Life is but a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon stage and is heard from no more. It is a tale full of sound and fury, told by an idiot, signifying nothing. I thought, what in the world does this have to do with being in the insurance business? But I learned it, and I came back the next day and I gave that talk to him, and this is what he said. He said, you got to understand, first part about it, you're an actor upon stage, you're playing a part, rehearsing your lines over and over again, and it's not that important early on that you concentrate on the sales. That's my job. Your responsibility is to learn your lines. He says, I want you to learn it exactly like this, and handed me a sheet of paper. I looked down, I said, do you want this learned verbatim? And he said, I don't know that verbatim crap, just word for word. Oh. He went on to tell me, actor upon stage, playing a part, rehearsing your lines over and over again, and realize that every porch is a stage, every door is a curtain, every door that opens is a curtain call. And when that door opens up, it's showtime, baby. And that was the time that we got a chance to perform. He used to say, there's people back in the office role-playing with each other, and they're not going to be selling each other anything. We got a chance to practice under live circumstances, and we might sell something. Isn't it amazing? Live circumstance, be able to sell something, and to be able to sell something, he's truly the master. You know, looking back, we didn't talk about this much, but I always wonder why we spent so much time at a funeral home of how to make arrangement. We spent time down at St. Anthony's Hospital on the cancer ward where where I was introduced to Dr. Ravelli and Donna Shepard. I kept thinking, what are we spending time and what are we wasting this time for? We can't sell anybody anything here. We would go to retirement homes. We would go to nursing homes. I thought again, what in the world are we doing spending this time? Because he didn't really explain it to me. But I believe this. I believe that he knew I had a competitive spirit and a will to win. But what he wanted to know, I think, from me is, did I have a heart of compassion, a heart of understanding, and of patience? I think that's what he really was trying to check. And so we would spend hour after hour at those different places. Now, when I got out to actually setting the stage out and learning the talk and getting ready to be on my own, everything again was as he had trained for. He said, sound and fury signifying nothing. He asked me, he said, you know what that means? I didn't have a clue. I tried to fake it and tried to give him an answer. He said, you don't really understand right now, but one day you will. One day you'll understand what this means. But you have the power to change people's lives with a stroke of a pen to create an instant estate. Do you understand that? I said, I think I do. He said, I don't think you do. One day you will. Well, it didn't take long. Now, I'm out there, as I used to call it, the 10, 2, and 4, and I'm not talking Dr. Pepper, Jecker, he used to say. That's out there knocking on the door, too. The way the script went is I would knock on the door. I'd introduce myself, my company. I said, I'm just out here walking and talking, sharing some facts and figures from the American Cancer Society. And may I assume that you, like most people, already have a fine major medical program. May I also assume, though, that if cancer was to strike any member of your family, you would be faced with an additional expense. Therefore, if I could show you a plan, one of the best plans that you've ever seen, to ease the mental and financial burden that cancer creates, would you have a few moments to spend with me? And then most people would say, what? Oh, I wish they did say yes. No, fail you too easy. No, they would put me off, and I was trained to say it will only take 15 minutes of your time and my time to decide whether the idea I have mine would be beneficial. And if I stay beyond that 15 minutes, it's only because you'll ask me to do so. Does that sound fair? And I would reach for my watch, as Bill knows. Show him the watch to know I had 15 minutes to make that presentation. So there's the script. Well, I'm out there walking, talking. I'm not paying attention on one particular house, but I knocked on the door. Always knock on the door, never ring a doorbell. Knock on the door, and a guy comes to the door, and he slings the screen door open and hollers, what do you want? It startled me. I took a step back. I couldn't think what to say. All that training did not kick in, and the only thing I could think of is to grab the brochure, and I said, you know anybody with cancer? I thought to myself, what in the world? Where did that come from? The guy said, who are you? What do you want? What are you doing? And I couldn't think of anything else but to hold up that brochure one more time. And he answered. He said, yeah, I know somebody with cancer. And I said, oh, is that right? I said, who is that? He said, my wife. I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear. I said, well, how is she? And he said, she's dead. Who are you? What are you talking about? What is that brochure? Well, I'm trying to slide off that step. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, of all the doors to knock on while I was at this one. I showed him the brochure. He said, let me see that thing. Come in here and tell me about it. And I went on to go through the presentation, and he told me this. He said, I always didn't live in this shotgun home. He said, I was out in Bullitt County, which is right outside Louisville, Kentucky. He said, I had the house out there, the rolling hills, the farm, the cattle. He said, man, I had it made. He said, when my wife was struck with cancer, I told the doctor I didn't have insurance. I didn't have a lot of cash money, but whatever it took for him to be able to cure my wife, he said, I want you to do it, and I'll make sure you're paid. He said, so I'm in the shotgun house today. I'm in this house today because I lost my farm. I lost my home. I lost my cattle. I lost my wife. It was her time to go home. It's not for me to question. He said, do you have any idea? Do you have any idea what you're selling? To you, it's probably about a commission dollar or some trophy or a trip or some other thing. Do you have any idea what this would have meant to my family and to myself and to my future? He said, I want you to do me a favor, young fella. He said, you're going to come across a lot of people that are going to say they don't need this coverage. Would you do me a favor? Would you tell them to call George Pritchett on Orchard Avenue? I'd sure like to set them straight. And I did. I used his name a number of times. I also promised whenever I had an opportunity such as this to be able to tell his story. And the next time they came along on the first death claim, and people say you'll always remember, I still didn't quite know the sound and fury signifying nothing until this took place. You see, Bernie and I were together again, and he had twisted this guy's arm. He was a reverend and a minister there at town. I thought, if I have to make a living doing this, he had already passed up 5 closes. He was on 6 and 7 and 8, and I thought to myself, what part of no doesn't Bernie understand? Every time that I would think that they would say no, I would get up out of my seat to leave, and Bernie would sit down. Well, we wrestled back and forth, and finally, I think so, to get us out of the house, he decided on $10,000 and 10,000 rider. Well, we were happy then, but here's what took place later. I got a phone call towards the late evening hours, must have been 9, 10 o'clock, and I get this phone call, and this is the wife telling me that her husband's body could not be released from the hospital, and the funeral home would not accept it. I was totally confused. I didn't know what was going on. She said that the application, is there any chance, is that in force, or how does that work? I remember y'all talking about that, and I said, I don't have a clue. I said, what are you saying, that your husband has died? She said, yes, he was killed out on Dixie Highway, tractor trailer truck, jackknifed and crushed the Volkswagen. He was killed instantly. I don't have any money, and I don't know how to get the body released to the funeral home, and I really don't know what to do. And I thought to myself, I don't know what to do either. And thank goodness that I'd come out of coaching and teaching, didn't have any money, had to move back with my parents. My father, as you know, 40 years in the insurance business, overheard the conversation and came to my rescue. Picked the phone up, said, can I help you? She told the story. He turned to me, he said, did you take an application? Was it all the questions asked? Recorded as honestly as possible? Did you collect money on it and checked it off, looked at signature? He made a phone call to Arch L. Hetty Funeral Home. He said, get dressed. We need to meet her down over at the funeral home. And he said they'll release the body. He'd talked with Arch L. Hetty's funeral home and made the arrangements. We went over and helped her out. And this is part 2 days later when we came down the aisle there at that funeral home where the casket was. There were a lot of people standing around her. And they seemed to separate when Bernie and I arrived. She put her arm around one side of his shoulder and head and put him in a headlock and put me in the headlock, and we drew close together, and I could feel the icy cold tears. And she's thanking us. Oh, I don't know what I would have done. I praise God. I just don't know what I would have done. It was the Lord's time to take him home. It's not for me to question, but do you know how much you've helped this family? I'm dying inside. $10,000 policy and $10,000 rider, $20,000. And yet I knew that Bernie had done everything possible he could that day. But why couldn't it have been $500,000 or $1 million or more to really help this lady? So here's what I found out. When I looked across, we were eyeball to eyeball. Bernie didn't have to say a word to me. I knew what he was saying to me. He was saying, this is what I'm talking about. This is the profession that you have accepted. This is the responsibility that you have. Now you understand, and I do. That day I was truly baptized into the insurance business. But here's the part. I don't know how many of you have ever looked into the eyes of a George Pritchett. And I don't know how many of you have received that phone call late in the evening. And I don't know how many of you have felt the icy cold tears of a widow at a funeral home. I don't know how many of you have received a phone call from a sister-in-law that says, you know that cancer policy you sold me? When you get time, can you come over to the house and explain it? I think we're going to need it. I don't know how many of you have been in the waiting room at a hospital. It was only supposed to be 20 minutes exploratory surgery. And 7.5 hours later, a doctor comes through that door, wringing wet, extends his hand and says, we did the best we could. I'm sorry, I'm not sure it was enough. I don't know how many of you hear the whispers of a funeral home that I hear today. The whispers that said, do you think the family will be taken care of? And they said, oh yeah. Yeah, the family should be okay. You know, his best friend is Steve Jecker. Steve Jecker's in the life insurance business. Steve Jecker never talked to his best friend about life insurance. Today, I get kidded a lot about in my house, in my bedroom, there's a poem, and it's called The Master's Hand. Many of you heard me say it a number of times. I don't do it to showboat. I don't do it for effect. I do it for myself. I do it to remind me the responsibility that I have to be in this business. And it goes this way. It's about an auctioneer who holds up a violin. He said, now tell me, my friends, what be the bid for this violin, and who will start this bidding for me? $1, who will go to $2? $2 go to $3, and $3 going once and twice, and gone for $3, said he. But no, in the back of the room walked forward a tall gray-haired man. He picked the violin up by the bow, he dusted it off, and he tightened the strings. And then he began to play a melody so beautiful and pure as the angel sings. When the music ceased, the auctioneer said, tell me, my friends, what be the bid for this violin, and who will start this bidding for me? 1,000, 1,000, who'll go to 2, 2,000, go to 3, 3,000, going once and twice, and gone for $3,000, said he. Well, the people were amazed, and some cheered, and some, just didn't quite understand. You see, what changed the price of the old violin? And the auctioneer replied, was a touch of a master's hand. And so many of us, with our lives out of tune and tattered and torn within, are auctioned cheaply through a thoughtless crowd, much like that old violin. With a glass of wine and drink in hand, we're going once, we're going twice. You see, we're going, and we're almost gone. And the foolish crowd doesn't quite understand the changes that can be made with the touch of a master's hand. No, the foolish crowd doesn't quite understand the changes that can be made with a touch of a master's hand. We have the power to change people's lives with a stroke of a pen, to create an instant estate. Dr. Donald Clifton, Purdue University, said it this way: isn't it strange that princes and kings, clowns that caper like sawdust strings, just common people like you and me, are builders for eternity? To each is given a bag of tools, a shapeless mass, this book of rules, and to each must lead a life that's shown a stumbling block or a stepping stone, helping people build to greatness. Helping people build to greatness. That's our chosen profession. And what a great, great profession it is. In closing, I think there's two questions we still need to ask ourselves every day. Number one, do we still see it as just an opportunity? Is it just an opportunity to make a little more money? To win a trip? To receive a trophy? Or is it a responsibility? And finally, in the words of Bernie Shortine, that used to ask me every Friday morning before the sales report, how many people are better off today than yesterday because you're in the insurance business? Tell me about them.